self-custody is essentially what Ronyn represents. And if you think about Srinivasan's network state thesis, if the network state is an ocean, the self-custody is each droplet. And the waves that form in the ocean organically are a result of the aggregation of these individual units of self-custody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship. My name is Lum, your Web3 host. For those of you who are new to the show, Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship is a show highlighting the journeys of builders and innovators in the Web3 and entrepreneurship spaces. Some topics expected in Web3 may get technical, but we do our best to keep it accessible for most people. Here I am today. I'm joined by Veda Sadhak. He's the CEO and founder of Ronyn Wallet. Veda, can you give a quick introduction by yourself?
Yeah. Hi, Lam. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Veda Sadhak. I'm the CEO and founder of Ronyn Wallet, where we essentially want to solve self-custody, simplify it, make it easy, and make it accessible to the masses. My background, electrical engineering, electric vehicles. In crypto, I've dabbled in a couple of other things, but right now this space is the most interesting. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think many of the listeners will be curious to know about your background, like your professional background. So feel free to pick a point when you think is appropriate to share. Maybe after the point when you graduated from university, and then up until the current point before the founding of your current company.
Sure.
Yeah.
So actually, during my last year during my bachelor's, I was very interested in Tesla, and particularly I was interested in the electric motor part of Tesla. So this is like 2015, 2016, and at that time I was kind of doing a lot of work on my spare time on electric motors and trying to get into the industry that way. But a friend actually kind of gave me the thesis about Tesla being a battery company more so than uh, 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 than just electric motors. And that kind of clicked with me, and I realized, hey, I should really explore this part a lot more. And so I ended up doing a startup working on batteries. So it was basically using recycled batteries for grid storage, end of life recycled batteries for grid storage. So batteries that people are throwing away, can we still aggregate them into a battery pack and use them for the grid? And that kind of pivoted into designing like advanced battery management systems. And then that kind of pivoted into working at Tesla Motors. When the Model 3 was first being released, I kind of joined the company and have been there for 6 years about. And got to work on a variety of things.
So what year did you join Tesla?
In 2017.
2017. Okay.
Yes. And so I've worked on battery testing, cell manufacturing, and then robotics manufacturing.
Nice.
During that time, is also about the time when I read the Bitcoin white paper, and that kind of also clicked in my mind. And so I like to say it's my whole time, like last 6 years, was EVs by day, crypto by night. I could not get enough time for either, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah. With Bitcoin, I mean, 2017, right? It was the ICO boom. So you had Ethereum.
Yeah.
You had I think I read the Bitcoin white paper, and then a couple months down, you had Filecoin have the 250 million ICO, and you were like, everybody's mind kind of exploded. And man, it was fun times trying to get into ICOs in the Gigafactory, like last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy day. So actually, one thing I've always been curious about, especially for like the batteries that are being used. You said you work for like a startup that work on batteries, right? So
Yes.
I'm curious, how do they actually recycle? How do people typically dispose of this battery, and then how do they actually recycle it? And I'm curious about that.
It depends. So what we were doing is I guess there's recycling where battery. So a battery when it's first created, right? Like, what does it mean for a battery to go bad on your phone?
Yeah.
So when it's first created, it has a lot of uniformity within it, right? So if you think about like unrolling a whole battery, it's kind of like a sheet. And the sheet has essentially a couple of layers. And in the beginning, that whole sheet is very uniform throughout, right? But over time, like 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, what happens is that sheet begins to form, like you could say, holes in certain locations. And the sheet is only as good as its weakest link. So when one part of the sheet gets really bad, okay, now the battery's got to get recycled. So what does recycling mean? For our case, what we wanted to do was to say, hey, this sheet is still useful, but in a limited capacity. So maybe we can have a cost arbitrage where we buy these low capacity cells, but we can aggregate them into the battery pack and still make it work for the grid. But then there's another part of recycling, which is, okay, now you have this material, you kind of split the can, you unroll the jelly roll, you kind of get it back into its raw materials, and then rebuild a new cell that is again fully uniform from the battery. So ours was kind of more end of life usage. That was our recycling, but actual battery recycling refers to like, destructively disassembling and recreating a new cell.
I see.
Using
Cool. So
using raw materials that you're not extracting. Sorry, yeah.
I see. Cool. So basically, trying to make the best use of the existing material in the battery, right? And I know battery probably made up a bunch of, I don't know, like raw element, maybe copper, zinc, I'm not sure what else.
Yeah. A lot of
lithium.
composites. A lot of composites. Yeah, and depends on the battery, but yeah, lithium, nickel, copper. Aluminum, because for the can, steel on occasion. But there's a lot of, it's material science, right?
I see. So basically, they have to separate. I think the idea where you separate each of the element into its raw form, right, and then you either sell it in bulk or. I see.
Yeah, cool. And there's a whole process depending on the form factor of the cell. There's different processes to take it apart. You also have to take apart the battery, which is easier. But that's also part of it. Yeah, the whole recycling process. Yeah.
Interesting. So during the time when you're working at Tesla, I'm curious because I think many people probably heard about the Tesla Gigafactory, right? Were you able to see Gigafactory, or so give us like, I don't know, what the feeling was it like? What was it like? Yeah,
the Gigafactory is cool. I like I said, I was working on battery manufacturing and battery testing at first, and when you first see like an electric vehicle battery like the Model 3, it's like 800, 900 pounds. It's huge.
Wow, and it's heavy.
It's huge. It's the heaviest part of the car, right? And the Model 3 is heavy vehicles. It's a heavy pack, and it looks so big. These things can get stacked up, but so it looks really big. But when you go into the Gigafactory and you see those same packs, right, stacked up like 8, 10, they look small again, and you're like, man, this is weird. Why does this look small again? And it's because the Gigafactory is so big.
Yeah.
You have to like reframe the way you look at certain things. You're like, okay, yeah, this is like a really, really big building. And at the time, it wasn't even fully built when I was there. So it was already big.
Yeah.
So, it's huge. It's huge. A lot is going on. A lot of cool tech. Yeah, it's a really cool facility. Yeah.
I see. So was it mainly like robots running the factory, or how many would you say like run by human and how many % run by robots inside the factory?
Quantifying numbers is difficult, but it depends also on the product that's being made. But the automation, okay, so the way to think about it is the bigger the piece that is being made. So suppose you're making a car, right? A car has way more complex. It is an aggregation of a lot of pieces,
many parts, right? Yeah.
As compared to a car, a cell itself has a reduced number of components, right? And then you can think about it like maybe a chip has a lot of components, but it's even less variety of components. So essentially, the lower variety of components you get, the more automation is there. So you can kind of think about it that way. So a chip would be fully automated. A cell is mostly fully automated, and then the more variety of parts you get, like just think about any part in any car, like car seats, the more variety of components you get, the less automated it generally becomes.
I see.
Yeah.
That makes sense, because I think the more variety, you cannot really, it's harder to automate, right? And then you need human to maybe, do some manual configuration, right?
Yeah. So it's actually, automating it is easy. It's what happens when something goes wrong. And if there's more vectors to where something can go wrong, the automation itself becomes, in a sense, somewhat of a risk. So that's kind of what you have to manage. When you have less components, your vector, like your space for things going wrong, is smaller. So you can go like all in, and it naturally can work. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So when you were at Tesla, then were you mainly working in the factory, or what was like your main role at Tesla then? Can you say?
So I was at engineering, but I was mainly at first at the factory, because all the model, like I said, the Model 3s were being I came when the Model 3 was being launched, so like the first 50 vehicles were being handmade, and I was kind of scaling that to 1 million vehicles. so a lot of engineering in the factory equipment, and then that kind of transitioned into doing more performance testing. So at first it was manufacturing testing, then performance testing on the battery pack. So if we want to race the Model S on a Nürburgring, we want to characterize the battery pack's performance, or if we want to characterize its lifetime. So working more in like a very well precision simulation environment for the product. And then that kind of transition when it went to cell manufacturing was like a fully automated factory system. And then kind of a robotics, which is like is just like, uh, uh, a robotics facility.
Cool. Yeah.
Like a
Fascinating.
lab plus manufacturing factory. Yeah.
Yeah. I see. So
Yeah.
you basically spend 6 years of your life in Tesla. I'm curious, were you able to ever meet Elon Musk during your time there?
Yeah, I mean, I met him as like, I met him as part of a team. I was in meetings.
So it's like a team meeting and he was there.
Yeah. That sort of thing. But yeah, it's kind of like, the scope is so big and you're like this small cog in a machine working on the specific thing, but it's cool. It's cool to just be a part of that whole movement he's creating, really, like whether it comes to space or EVs, robotics, just the kind of gravity that goes with it is kind of insane. Yeah. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun that it's not like, it's not like a concert or like a music show. It's literally engineering. Like there's this gravity around, like it's the same kind of gravity, but it's like social gravity, but it's like, hey, we're engineering something. And that's like a unique experience.
That's quite cool. Yeah. And then, okay. So after I think your gig with Tesla, or maybe during your gig with Tesla, when did you actually come to Japan then? Was it after?
So
right?
Japan was after. Japan was right after when I quit Tesla. I kind of rolled out here. Yeah.
I see. Cool. And then I think you said you read like the Bitcoin white paper during your time at Tesla, and then you're doing a lot of like ICO. Then so I think it sounds like you've been through maybe what, like two crypto cycles already, right? And then
yes,
so
I'd say
no.
Yeah, so like the first time I heard about Bitcoin, I was actually working at a pension fund.
I see.
And at the time, someone had told me about Bitcoin, and I kind of just dismissed it as like a card game or something that, and I'm not gonna fall for that. Like that was like something I did in elementary school, and I'm no longer interested. And then kind of like 2017 came, I read the white paper, and this whole idea of like decentralization, it was like, computationally it made sense. It was like, if that made sense, a lot of other things didn't make sense. And so I started reading a lot of books on like monetary theory, because at that time, that's kind of what Bitcoin was close to. We hadn't reached this kind of Ethereum like computation narrative yet. So it was just money. I remember reading The Depth of Money by Jim Rickards. And I was reading that book, I was like kind of making sense of it right up until he kind of explained fractional reserve banking. And then it was like, boom, like, wait, like money is just made. And then I was at that time taking economics classes and asking a lot of questions, and I had a background in programming, so the technical side of it made sense. And then okay, this is something. And at the time, this is 2016, so Ethereum was also happening. I had come into contact with a guy who was working on Ethereum based energy trading. So, like working in the battery space, but he wanted to trade energy between buildings. And that's kind of what really got me introduced to Ethereum and the possibilities of, oh, wow, this is like money, but there's more. And then 2017 came, and boom, like, everything was that was the first like real mainstream wave for me. Like Filecoin, a lot of tokens, a lot of mistakes, a lot of wins. And then but that kind of got me like fully interested, like, okay, there's something happening here. And then 2020 was just like even more insane. 2020, 2021, it just kind of like went fully mainstream. Like, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I think back in like 2021 is like you really go pretty big in the US, right? Like the whole what's it, NFT craze, and a lot of the, what was it, like the million APY or APR, right? Or billion,
Yes.
sometimes billion. You see like a billion. I forgot the term for it. It's crazy time, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah. So 2017, like 2017, what happened, it had a huge reach, right? But
yeah,
2021, what happened is you had people in like developing economies who were maybe at not the highest socioeconomic ladder, who at the face of it, you wouldn't think would be, having crypto or like any level of sophistication. But it happened. Like you literally had people quit their jobs doing this crypto NFT thing. Like in Vietnam, you had India,
yeah,
like 100 million crypto users like that, and you're like, I don't even know if they understand like public-private keys, but they got it.
yeah.
And so just a number of use like 2017 for me was a lot of money coming in. It was a lot of users, but a lot of money coming into the space. And 2021 was like a little taste of like what it means when a lot of users come in. Like, but yeah, the APYs were crazy. Like, it was crazy. It didn't even at some point. Yeah, I mean, it didn't make sense, but
I know,
we saw the
for
app.
sure. There, yeah, I think a lot
Yeah,
of math back then didn't make sense, but whatever. It was like a first come, gotta first get out type of thing. Right? Oh man, there's
yeah,
so many like Ponzi scheme back in the day. It's crazy. Anyway,
yeah,
but that's
yeah.
a Web3 world we live in. So yeah, before we deep dive into your current company, which is Ronyn Wallet, can you share with us what you do for fun in your free time? What are your hobbies?
You said before we get into the company, like about me.
Yeah, yeah. But you, so like, what, can you share with us what do you do for fun in your free time? Your hobbies
Yeah, yeah, sure.
outside of
So,
Web3?
yeah, so I enjoy lifting weights. I think that's just keeps your body on balance. It's a good time for solitude for me. Like lifting weights, you get to think about a lot of things. Lifting weights, I like to train jiu-jitsu when I can, because I'm in the
Nice.
middle of moves. But yeah, I train jiu-jitsu, train wrestling. I like to do more striking, but just in general, MMA is a lot of fun. I always used to like individual sports, and I used to play a lot of badminton. But badminton doesn't necessarily translate good into old age if you, yeah.
Really?
But
Why? Is it
MMA,
because of
so
joint problem or what?
yeah, because it's not high impact in the way that MMA is, but it's a very high repetitive impact. Like you're
Hmm.
constantly doing jumps, you're constantly doing lunges, you're
Yeah.
constantly what you call in boxing like snapping. And that
Yeah.
snap really, it's a lot of impact on your arm, and you're doing it
On
repeatedly,
your
like,
probably on your joint, right? Yeah.
yeah. So usually people are shoulders, elbow, or wrist blowout.
I see.
For me, it was like my wrist was getting there, and in that sense, it's also in a sense unbalanced because your arm is more, one arm is being used more, one leg is being used more. But
Makes
in
sense.
that sense, MMA is a little more balanced. It's a little more variety, a lot more
Yeah.
variety. Different places in the world have different specialties of MMA, and so
Yeah.
in that sense, I think it synergizes very well.
I see.
Yeah,
So
so I mean
were
MMA
were you competing in MMA, or is you just like do it for fun or
just for
something?
fun, just for fun, just for
Oh, fun.
fun.
Okay.
I would fantasize about competing, but let's see, one step at a time. And then I also really enjoy macroeconomics
Hmm.
because I mean, that's kind of what the Bitcoin space got me into. But getting more into traditional finance and economics, it's kind of like in the world of fake news. The best
Yeah.
thing to do is read the numbers because if
Yeah.
you read the numbers, they kind of like just pull out the basic information about what is happening in the world. And
That's
there's so
true.
many ways to look at it, so many interpretations of it. So I love reading the numbers of macroeconomics and finance as much as I can. And there's just so much knowledge and so much perspectives there that it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think so too. I think of course for like the layman, it may take some time for them to actually understand all those numbers, right? But for those who probably, you said you were working on like a pension fund or something, right? So you probably already familiar with a lot of finance concepts, so probably easier for you then.
Yeah,
Cool, cool.
but you know what? That's kind of what Bitcoin enables for the layman. Like it brings
Hmm.
them fundamentally into the space of finance with the right mindset. And once you start with that correct mindset of like what is money, what is banking, that's actually the right way to build a mental model for finance. And then you can take that to an arbitrary level of complexity, but actually that's a fundamentally a good way to start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, so without further ado, let's go ahead and deep dive into your current company, Ronyn Wallet. Maybe you can maybe share a little bit of history, why you built it or when did you start, and then leading. If you're free to share any presentation or materials that you have as well too.
Sure. So Ronyn Wallet's basic thesis is, we want to simplify self-custody. We want to make it accessible to the masses. We want to make it really easy to use across chain, and that's kind of the basic premise we have. Now, a little bit about how we started it. Originally, like I said, 2017, I really got interested in crypto. I started holding crypto, and I wanted to build a wallet that I wanted to use, right? And at the time, my background was a lot in hardware that kind of, secures people's lives, like literally, ECUs running on robots, which are cars.
I see.
But I realized, what's kind of the right match between my expertise, what I would like to use. And so, at the time I was exploring more and more wallets and wallet technologies, working with projects. And from that, kind of the first Ronyn Vault, the hardware wallet, was born. So this is the vault.
Cool.
I'll kind of open up later, but yeah. And then from there, self custody. Once you get into it, like you build a hardware wallet, right? You realize the actual basic thesis is this idea of self custody. And if you really think about self custody, it has a very, very, very large scope. And that's kind of the rabbit hole that I've kind of been have gotten into, and that's this self custody is essentially what Ronyn represents. And if you think about Balaji Srinivasan's network state thesis, it's kind of like if the network state is an ocean, the self custody is each droplet, right?
Yeah.
And the waves that form in the ocean organically are a result of the aggregation of these individual units of self custody. And so, self custody is not just a hardware wallet. Self custody is not just a mobile wallet or a browser extension. Self custody is not just account abstraction, but it's self, you, and how do you provably custody yourself? And I think a little bit over time, it's going to become more. The scope is getting larger and larger. It started off with crypto, but it's going to get much, much larger. Self-custody of yourself, self-custody of organizations, etc. And so, just to kind of plug it in on this note, as I was getting into it, I realized, I have to, when giving someone an idea of, hey, this is what a crypto wallet is, you essentially end up selling self-custody. And that's why I also kind of released my book, which is The Foundations of Self-Custody, which essentially talks about this, like the grand vision of self-custody from the individual to the network state. How do you get these layers of self-custody recursively building upon themselves to create, like DAOs and network states? So that's kind of like the philosophical view of what Ronyn does. What we do practically is we provide wallets for retail, and we provide account abstraction for dApps. So making dApps feeless, seedless, and super seamless. And then on the retail side, mobile wallet, desktop wallet, hardware wallet. So you can use a hardware anywhere, anytime, anyhow, any chain. And so wherever you are, if you're at the start, you're like, hey, I just want to store a little bit of crypto on my mobile phone, you can do that with the Okane wallet, which is our mobile app. And then if you have tons of assets and you want to secure it, you can use a hardware wallet. And if you want to go even one level above, you can kind of construct a multi-sig solution with our product, and that has legacy management, it has policy controls. So it works well for organizations and individuals.
Cool. Wait, so when you said like multi-chains, what chains right now are compatible on your wallet? Is it like EVM chain, Bitcoin?
Yeah, so right now it's the Bitcoin VM. It's the Bitcoin VM, it's the EVM, and associated layer 2s. So we have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polygon, and then we also we're adding more and more layer 2s because the space is becoming very layer 2. And then we're adding tokens all the time, but strategically, we're interested to get into more maybe some of the ZK EVM, ZK VMs that are like more complete, maybe like Starknet, and then also maybe some more consumer grade chains like Base or Binance Smart Chain.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think you kind of want to go where the user want to be, right? Yeah, it kind of makes sense. I think Base for sure is very strong. I actually had an episode with the Base head of DevRel on Base. I'll leave a link up here if you want to check out the episode. Yeah, but yeah, it sounds very interesting. So did you, like, for the MVP product, did you design and build the entire thing by yourself, or
so we've gone through multiple versions of it, but the initial one, like I said, it was kind of like an exploration, after EVs by day, crypto by night. It was kind of like exploration in my free time. And so the first versions were pretty much, I did the firmware, software, hardware, plastics, outsourced the manufacturing, but a lot of the full stack engineering, electronics to web app.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I used to always write code. My background's in EE, so it was just a natural thing.
Awesome. And then so I guess after you finished building the first product, right? So I guess you went on testing a bit, and then at what point did you think that this was gonna, be a good thing to scale up the operation and then outsource and get like hundreds or thousands made?
I mean, we were already seeing demands for wallets, right?
I see.
In 2017, 2019.
Yeah.
I mean, the bigger, like if you think about this industry, at the end of this decade, maybe it displaces gold. It's a $10 trillion industry. It's a 10x, right?
Yeah.
Every one of those, 10x theoretically, let's say 10x users come in. Each one of them is going to need a wallet. So the demand is present. The challenge that for wallets is that there is still not a fully clear narrative. And maybe, there's not a clear, I guess the right way to say it is a design pattern. We're still kind of coming out with how exactly that functions. We started off with just software wallets, then we came into hardware wallets. Now we're doing like multi-sig account abstraction, but like a design pattern that works for people and applications in general. I think we're on the cusp of finding that, but in that process for us, we kind of like have a product in each of these spheres, and we're kind of testing out with different teams and users kind of what works. And I think it's going to be a combination of things, It's not like what self-custody is, like what a wallet is for you. It's not just the wallet on your phone. It's not just the hardware wallet. It's that kind of ecosystem. That is going to be what a wallet really becomes. And for us, I mean, the demand is there. It's just more of the challenge is what is the right narrative? What is the right solution that's going to go forward? And I think account abstraction is like a really amazing concept in the space that's kind of coming out soon.
Yeah, for sure. I think account abstraction is for sure something's going to be. It is already taking up a lot of companies, and now even I think some exchanges are even thinking just incorporating some aspect of account abstraction right into their own like centralized exchange. And then I think a lot of them certainly they want to do away with all the complicated seed phrase, and they're basically trying to simplify the whole onboarding experience for user, because from 2017 or even 2021, like how onboarding experience was compared to now, I think it has already improved quite a lot. I don't think it's like at the point where we ready to onboard the whole like mainstream yet, but so I think we still have some way to go for sure. It's a work in progress.
It's very close, and that's kind of why we launched Ronyn Enterprise, because I think this account abstraction is going to totally change the DApp experience, right? It's going to make dApps feeless, going to make dApps seedless. I still think there's going to be seed, because if you look at self-custody at the very basic level, you need to have a way for a single person that has perhaps no connections. People like to call it like the Bitcoin maximalist. I like to say James Bond. Let's say you have James Bond, a person who relies on nobody but himself. He needs a way to recover his wallet.
Yeah.
And if you say it like that, then you need a seed phrase. You need some kind of backup code. So I think
what if they can recover by the email? I think email is like I feel like that's
like a backup,
probably one way, right? Yeah, like link it to an email. Link it to email. If you forget, then you use your email to recover. I'm not sure how secure that would be, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean the question is about self-custody, right? Is that email then custodied by you or not? And so, but if it's really and truly self-custody, there needs to be some artifact that only you control that's in a sense very, very physically durable. And a seed phrase is a good abstraction for that. You can have a wallet that has a seed, but still have it be seedless, right? Like you don't need to show the user the seed until they want to back it up.
Yeah.
So you can still have it be seedless, but I think seeds will as a concept. I mean, even if you think about Web2, right? Look at all these authenticator apps. They have seed phrases. They're just like actually a lot worse. They have like 12 backup codes that you write down. You have to copy it. You can't memorize it. That's essentially a seed phrase. Like authenticator apps, the backup is basically worse than seed phrase, and that people are using that. People literally are using that. So I don't think seed phrases necessarily they get a lot of a bad rap. I don't think they go away. But yes, I do think you basically get like one-click wallets. Like you click a button, boom, it's all there. It's like seed, email, all the biometric, everything's there, and you find out after the fact in a very spoon-fed way how you can recover your wallet. But the usability is totally like feelless, like one click and you're in the app. You're in the DApp.
Awesome. And then I'm curious. So I mean, now your company's been running for probably like what, more than a year, two years already, right? And so I'm sure you
So
currently
we're running for about 8 months now. Like,
8 months. Okay. Oh,
yeah, because it's yeah, I left earlier 2024 is kind of when we went all in.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. So almost a year soon.
I see. Cool, cool. But I mean, we both know that I think even 6 months in crypto is like so much longer than 6 months in the real life. By real life, I mean like Web2 company, right? So yeah, there's been a lot going on. And then for who do you say right now? Like, what would be how many percent are like the retail user and how many percent are like business customer at the moment?
For ourselves.
Yeah, for your company for
For ourselves,
Ronyn Wallet.
just in terms of just because of the number, it's retail dominated,
I see.
but we're aggressively like Ronin Enterprise is a new thing, so we're pushing that out a lot more. Yeah, want to
Can you?
expand that, and that's kind of
Mm,
like between part of it is working with dApps, so technically it deploys for retail, right? So
I see.
yeah, so like the
What
wallet, even though it's used by the dApp, it really is the retail users that take final custody of it.
I
Yeah.
see. I see. And when you say Ronin Enterprise, like what exactly does it? How does it improve or help the enterprise? What like
Yeah, so
why do they come to a solution? Yeah.
sure. So enterprise means two things. It means in this case Web 2, which is the enterprise part is more digestible by Web 2. And by
Yeah.
Web 3, you kind of have to think about it as dApps. Enterprise is a
I
dApp.
see. Yep.
And what it
I see.
does is kind of like how you mentioned already, like an exchange, right? Right now, an exchange,
Yeah.
you kind of log in with your email password. And then the reason why is because it just simplifies operations for the exchange. They can do a bunch of operations for you on the back end, and you don't need to manage any infrastructure. But the bad side of that is, now you're not self-custodying. And same thing with dApps. A lot of times you find dApps that are taking Web 2 approaches to building Web 3 projects. And then, or if they do totally Web 3, then the onboarding is just very, very difficult. So we kind of combine those two worlds for both Web 2 and Web 3. So if you're like an exchange, we can actually, with our technology, you can custom design what we call a smart account, which is basically an implementation of account
Hmm.
abstraction. And it's
Yeah.
a cross-chain implementation. So it's the same standard across chains. And then with that, you can have the application perform actions on the user for the user. So, and then also take fees for the user, but then you can have enough of policy enforcement that there's still the custody remains on the user side. So now you kind of have the best of both worlds. You can't have an exchange that does certain operations, but they can do general day-to-day keeping operations, but then the final custody comes to the user. And then this kind of thing gets even more important when you work with dApps, where essentially you have like smart contracts that can take care of a bunch of operations for the user. The user doesn't have to worry about how they happen or what is the cost of making that happen. That is economically incentivized by the dApp. But on the user side, you maintain full custody of the asset still.
Hmm.
And it's totally transparent. It's totally on chain. So it's verifiably on chain. Yeah. So that's kind of what we provide. So essentially, we make it easy for the dApp, the Web 2 developer, or the enterprise, so Web 3 developers, to kind of deploy these smart accounts, integrate them into their apps, and then deploy them for the users, and eventually make it a really seamless user experience.
Makes sense. Yeah. So so it sounds like your main business model right now is still mainly focused on the retail, right? And then in the future, probably expanding more towards for the enterprise and corporation, and also dApps, right? Like you said.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Mainly, it's actually dApps. dApps, I think, are
I
the
see.
most interesting. Um, yeah, yeah. I think because right now in this space, we have like a narrative for money flowing into the space, right? And money is, depending on how you see it, is flowing into the space. But we don't have right now a narrative for how users come into the space. Like that is not there. And in that sense, I think that is what is more interesting to me. And what we're working on, the goal is really to enable that. How can we make it so easy that these dApps are able to onboard users? And so between what we're working on, like retail, enterprise, dApps is really the most interesting. And even within the dApps, we're pretty selective about it, and we're really interested about working with kind of dApps that, rather than DeFi, that work more with social finance or really social change projects, because
I
that
see.
is where now you get users coming in a decentralized form into kind of movement, perhaps eventually into a network state. Like that's how we actually move the space forward. Like if we just stick to DeFi, Bitcoin has two narratives, right? It's a new type of money, but then blockchain is a new type of technology. If we just have the DeFi narrative, then Bitcoin is the new money. But there's still the narrative of, is Bitcoin a new technology or blockchain is a new technology, right? And that part really needs a social driver to make that happen.
Yeah, for sure. I think eventually, to onboard more people to Web3, we do need to have like non-financial application as well, right? Yeah, right now I think majority is still like DeFi. But yeah, I think we're slowly starting to see a lot of like social application, like SocialFi, and I think Farcaster is a pretty good example of that. Lens, maybe another one over there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we need more though, for sure.
Yeah, because otherwise, if we stick in the DeFi, what we're gonna have is essentially whales this market is gonna serve whales, or it's gonna serve close to be more well-serving to whales. But if we wanted to serve the average common man, if we wanted to do good for basic society, then we need to have a narrative for how users come into the space, and that is the social dApp thesis. And yeah.
Cool. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
So to go back to the final point, like we're actually the most interesting part is working with dApps, to make that happen. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. Now much I'm quite curious about the team behind, building the Ronyn Wallet. Can you share with us like how many people are working in your company and what do majority of people do?
Yeah. I keep the team is lean. We like I said, I train weights, so I like to have the analogy of bulking and cutting a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense in many different ways. So the team is lean. It's about 7 to 8 people, but we have our output is very high. Technical output is very high relative to what we work with, and we have like hardware engineers, firmware architects, software architects, a lot of technical prowess, and that's how we're able to launch with like physical hardware, electronic products. Maybe I'll just open it up.
Sure.
All the way from plastics to, so this is the Ronyn Vault, the hardware wallet.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Passive touch display, multi-token. So, designing all the plastics all the way to the firmware, bootloader, etc. To also, making web apps and dApps and a whole platform for on-chain security. So that kind of thing, is what we were able to do.
Nice.
So yeah,
I see. And then is a majority of your team, are they like distributed? Are they based in Japan? Or
yes.
over?
So we're fully remote.
Interesting.
And it works well. It works well for the crypto space because, the nature of crypto is it's international, and when generally you find apps that are building in this, they become, as soon as they when you deploy a dApp, it's international in a sense. Like as long as you can onboard assets or tokens, it's international. So it works well. I think the nature of what we're working on plus the nature of the team is synergistic.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, Web3 is basically remote by nature. Majority of your team. I'm
Exactly.
curious. I think you're like the first hardware company that's actually on my podcast, as far as I know, in the Web3 space. So how do people collaborate on the hardware part? Like when you work remotely, that's a part that I cannot wrap my head around yet. I mean, I'm not an expert in hardware, so.
Yeah. So yeah, that is its own kind of how do you say it? Fine tuning. You have to abstract. The key is abstraction. So you have to abstract particular subcomponents out entirely. And so in that sense, when you can decouple that, so what is harder, right? Like these days, if you just, or I guess in the context of a hardware wallet, it's basically electronics, an operating system, some firmware. Once you in the firmware, it's like cryptography, and then you have some drivers, and then you have like essentially there's that, and then once you get past the electronics, you have some plastics, manufacturing operations. So it's kind of this whole thing. So each of those things you want to separate out and decouple into enough of a space so that you have geographically defined. The only pieces that need to be geographically done are well decoupled from everything that needs to be done in software. So basically, as soon as you get from the OS, right, you basically can have, if you can provide your developers with a way to fully remotely test, develop, instrument their machines, then you can kind of do that whole development remote. And and then you have a specialized team that manages just the physical manufacturing of it, right? And then the design itself, you can also, we have a lot of technology behind it. Like we can actually, uh, like remotely, like we have specialized hardware to kind of test this test and develop the firmware, the OS fully remotely.
I see. Cool.
And then there's even because of hardware wallets, there's also the manufacturing. There's also the manufacturing risk vector. Like your manufacturing needs to be secure too, and a lot of that can actually be secured through a firmware as well. There's a lot of little information you can extract and or inject that can you can actually secure your manufacturing and delivery of the device in this way.
I see.
So it can be done. It's hard, but it can be done. Yeah.
I see.
And we're doing it.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that. So has any of the engineering principle that you learned at Tesla, was it been like helpful in helping you with this? So I think one thing I've read about the book on Tesla, or maybe Elon Musk, was like, I think if I remember correctly, so for the car, right, the firmware or the software is like fully upgradable, right? But then the hardware, of course, the hardware is like one is delivered to the customer, you cannot upgrade it, right? But the firmware or the software is like completely upgradable, so you can just keep upgrading it. So is your wallet in some way or like upgradable, the firmware or software, and then hardware, of course, once you ship it, it's like it's fixed.
Yeah, so it's actually fully upgradable. I mean, this is kind of how like firmware updates are designed.
I see.
So it's fully upgradable, but to add a little bit more context to the Tesla thing, like it's actually pretty profound. Think about if you design hardware from this aspect of, hey, your firmware can be updated. It means a lot, because what does the firmware mean in a car? You have ECUs, right? Like each subsystem has like an intelligent controller. That's basically when we're saying like, what does it mean for something to get updated? The car gets updated. It means each one of these subcomponents, like whether it's an engine, the engine has an ECU that can get updated, right? But that update, that software, it's not like your Windows or Mac OS. It's running firmware, which means it's code that is running in time with the physics of that device, right? So like that firmware for the engine is running. So what you're really saying is, when I can update the firmware, I can literally update the physics of that device, how that operates.
I see.
Right? So when you have something going wrong, let's say something overheats or something happens on mass, there's an issue, you can literally update the operational physics of that device remotely to negate that issue, right? And so that is why, like, the key is not you can just do a firmware update. It's because it's like a physical environment. You can update the physics of that device to operate a little differently, to basically have a benefit there, an economic advantage, economic arbitrage, whatever. But so that's kind of in our case, and you can even So with hardware, it is concrete, but you kind of want to design as much into it, so that when you let it go, there's features that you can just through software keep adding on. And
makes sense.
Specifically in blockchain, it's interesting like how you can do the updates, or in the hardware wallet space, the firmware update is highly contested. How do you do a secure firmware? You have wallets that use QR codes, but everybody generally uses like a USB or Bluetooth to update. So it's a highly contested thing of how to do that securely. But yeah, I mean, by default, yeah, all of the Ronyn vaults, the hardware wallets are fully upgradable.
I see. So if people want to upgrade it, they just like scan a QR code or something. But of course, like from your website, maybe something like that.
Yeah, so the application will just guide you. The Ronyn desktop and the Okane wallet, the software application will just guide you. If there's an update, it'll check your device and then do the update, just like your Tesla would.
I see. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So then it would being compatible, or like if adding a new chain, would that require like a new firmware, maybe a minor version update or something, right?
Exactly. Minor, exactly. A minor firmware update. Yeah.
Makes sense.
I mean, I guess to go back to your point of how maybe Tesla inspired parts of the engineering, I think it's more around the philosophy of it, of how, Tesla arguably moves hardware in a sense as fast as software development.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
And they're able to do that because of this very, very scrappy nature. Like, essentially very quickly have the right ingredients in place to build something out, a minimally workable version, very, very fast. and then having the key there then is to have an entire groups of like engineering that can take that little MVP and in a second just like they like the stack is already there to scale it up, whether it's manufacturing, firmware, hardware, plastics, etc., etc. You already have the expertise to just immediately just someone just steps in, boom, it's scaled. So then the game becomes, well, what MVP do you want to build? What is the what is the first principles reasoning why this thing should exist as a separate entity and why it has economic viability? Yeah, then you can have that.
Cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, we
Yeah.
will always want. I mean, as we both know that a lot of new things always evolving in the world of Web3, right? So I believe that the software firmware update will constantly be necessary, right? To
Yeah.
integrate a new feature, right, or maybe new function. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So sounds like things are going pretty well. But what do you say are like some of the main challenges facing your company or your team?
The main challenges would be, the wallet space is highly competitive, and rightfully so. I mean, it has to be. It's something that everybody is going to use no matter what at a basic level. So there's a lot of competition, and what does that mean? It means that there's a lot of people going in many different directions very, very fast. And so kind of in that, it's also you really have to think about what is their narrative, what is the end goal. And as long as your end goal is clear, then you're gonna have your skin in the game is gonna have a value. Apart from that, like unlike maybe if someone's making like a travel app, right, or like some Web2 app, your business is not so sensitive to macroeconomics in a way, or like macro, but blockchain is specifically the industry where it's super duper sensitive to what is going on in like macroeconomics,
Yes.
And so that I'll say in a way that's a challenge, but that is also huge upside. And so just kind of navigating that, like you kind of, this idea of a winter in crypto is like a really, it's like aligns with macroeconomic events. So I'd say like the macroeconomics of it, the competitiveness of it, but that's kind of what at the end of the day makes it fun as well.
I see. Cool. So one time I remember I attended a seminar. I think it was like Cool Wallet was like the presenter. I think the CEO of the Cool Wallet. I don't know if you've heard of the company. It's like based in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Hardware wallet company too. So I think he was presenting. He was talking about like the evolution of like the crypto user, right? At what point does the user actually begin adopting a hardware wallet? And I think my main takeaway from that was that like in the beginning, if user only have maybe $100 or $1,000, even very very little money, right? You probably don't need a hardware wallet. But then as you grow, accumulate more and more of your crypto, and then you get wealthier, or maybe you get lucky or whatever, and then you want to store more of your wealth, right? Or self custody, then I think that's the point when a lot of people thinking about switching to like a hardware wallet. I guess another way to put it is like when you have a significant portion of your net worth, right, in crypto, and you don't trust exchange, especially after FTX collapse and many other Celsius and a bunch of other mishaps that happen in the industry, then I feel like that would be a good tailwind, I would say, for the hardware makers, producer.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's definitely an idea of, like for example, your smartphone, right? You pay 500 to 1,500 bucks for it, and it offers you some level of value. But if you just think about it in that sense, where if the average hardware wallet is like 300 bucks, about, and what amount of value justifies that cost?
Yeah. How much is your hardware wallet, by the way?
So it's 300 bucks.
I see.
US dollars.
I see.
And it's basically the idea of how much value do you, like if you have gold, if you have 1 ounce of gold, that's 2,600, and a safe costs you like $1,000. Hey, maybe that doesn't make sense. But if you have if you have a like 50 ounces of gold, and now a safe costs $1,000, and the gold overall is worth $100,000, then okay, a safe makes sense. So there's just like the monetary arithmetic there. And then I think there's also like a certain level of personality. Like I said, there's the Bitcoin maximalists, or the more cosmopolitan version like James Bond. Those types will just naturally prefer hardware wallets. And I think, personalities are on the spectrum, but there'll be a certain subset who kind of want that. And then I think there is like a sexy factor to a hardware wallet.
Yeah.
Which over time may make a big difference. But And then the last part is hardware integration. I think eventually you're going to have more and more systems, more and more privacy, like more and more private data come on chain. And so the importance of like a hardware will kind of just naturally be there. But again, like a wallet alone is not going to be one device. Like that is not the future. That I don't see as the future. Like just to think about your wallet is it's like more of your hardware signer. Like your hardware is just your signer, and you're gonna have
Yeah.
multiple signers that consist of your wallet. Okay, it's not one device is not a wallet. The device is just one of your signers, and there's a
I
whole
see.
ecosystem that you will have, and that ecosystem is the wallet. Yeah.
Interesting.
So I
Yeah.
see people viewing hardware wallets more as hardware signers in the future, closer to what hardware tokens are right now.
I see. Cool. Yeah, I think that bring perfect segue into maybe a futuristic question about hardware wallets. So where do you think Web3 hardware wallets heading maybe in the next few years? Do you think that Ledger will still be, I don't know, the industry main, what is it?
So it's hard to say who will be the main giant, just because there's like market. Okay, if you take the market variability away, if you take
Yeah.
the all these things away, I think eventually, yeah, like I said, hardware wallets are not wallets anymore. They're just signers, right?
Hmm.
I think the form factor relatively remains somewhat similar. But
Okay.
you're gonna have it become way more commoditized. So like originally iPhone was the best, but
Yeah.
at this point it just becomes more and more competitive, where the difference is just you're just gonna have more variety of what is somewhat like the basic functionality is all the same. And then what's going to differ is this is just a natural thing of how like the industry will
Yep.
grow, but you'll have little niches of what wallets can do. And so companies will have their own niche. And so I think what you'll find is that basically a lot of wallet companies, the technology itself will become on par, and then the niches will define the hardware signers. And the futuristic idea is eventually a wallet is not a device. A device is just a signer. A wallet is an aggregation of signers. So an aggregation of devices. That entirety, that thing is going to be yeah, it's totally seamless. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm also quite curious about how it will evolve in the future as well. But I think, I mean, from what I've learned in economics, right, and then as more competition, more manufacturer, more competition enter the field, right, and then obviously, I think the prices of hardware wallet will probably go down, right? I mean, I'm guessing, but of course, they could also be go up as well too. But I think the more likely way I see it, that it will more likely go down. Like you said, right? If it become a commodity, if everyone is basically offer the same function, then most likely the prices will go down compared to what they are now.
Well,
Uh,
price is always relative, right? Relative to what?
yeah, it's
And
true.
we're in a time where the relatives are changing. So, but if I were to say that relative to certain currencies, yeah, they will not drop, but relative to certain maybe currencies, commodities, they will drop significantly. Yeah, price is always relative. It's basically the energy cost to create that hardware wall, to create that physical thing. Hopefully that goes down over time. Like yeah, the the energy used to create that thing needs to go down over time. Otherwise, we're in trouble.
I see. Cool. Yeah, I think makes sense. And well, which brings me to like the next logical question, which I'm curious about. Like, how do you see the future, like maybe Web3 hardware wallet here helping to onboard 1 billion people, or maybe helping onboard a lot more people into Web3? How would it help?
So in the immediate, what it will do is provide a level of confidence that in security that software does not, by its like very essence, right? Like
Mm,
secure hardware is secure hardware. There's a reason why credit cards are, you carry a credit card,
yeah.
and why it's gone so long. So I think at first there's this level of comfort or level of security, and then shoot, my second point, I just lost it. Yeah, so security, and then what it will turn into is yeah, okay. So yeah, the other thing hardware wallets will eventually end up doing is, there is this idea of like censorability, right? Like can you censor an application? Right? Like
Mm,
if there is an application, is it immutable or is it not immutable?
okay.
Now, the thing is like a computer, like your desktop computer is more immutable than your smartphone. Why? Because that smartphone, you can only download apps, or 99% of the apps are coming from an app store, right?
Yeah, correct.
But on a desktop computer, that's not the case. Like there's no app store. You just go to a website, and a website is a totally
Yeah,
open space.
yeah,
There's no necessarily no gatekeepers. There's a lot less gatekeepers for
yeah.
applications that go on to a desktop computer or like a personal computer
That's
than
true.
what goes on a smartphone. And so I think in a sense that risk that, certain entities will just prevent this space from deploying apps, as unlikely as it may seem, hardware wallets provide a little bit of a what do you call it, sharp teeth to blockchain to say that,
Mm,
look, if it gets to that level, we have the capacity to entirely design a secure smartphone. So
mm,
if the app stores do not allow some level of, or just immutability for dApps, that the hardware wallet makers will step up and take care of business there. That hardware wallets provide that kind of security to the industry as a whole. And then I think over time, hardware wallets, there's going to be hardware wallets, the back end, they're going to exist everywhere. The basic essence is security. So, and then you'll get hardware wallets coming into wearables. So it'll become the more of the physical. It's kind of like, the hardware wallet is, self custody, right? Like, what is a private key? It's just a digital abstraction of what you define as you. And so the hardware wallet is just kind of like, how do you secure that and make that physically, making that physically integrated. That experience, that'll become what hardware wallets do. So how does it take us to 1 billion users? It reduces risk, it increases security, and it'll increase like physical seamlessness. Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. I'm absolutely agree with that. I just want to touch upon the point you said about like being the gatekeepers, right, on like mobile device. Right now, we're mainly dominated by either Google Play Store on Android and then with Apple Store on Apple devices, right? So I think recently Solana already launched a Solana mobile phone. Right? I don't know if you've heard about that, but yeah,
Yes.
they're
Yes.
actually releasing the second generation, right? And I think what they're trying to do is like basically trying to disrupt that because they see that Apple, I think right now I'm pretty sure they're still taking like 30%, right, whatever revenues from
Hmm.
app purchases, right? So Solana
Yeah.
want to take that away, and they're gonna build their own, like, I think Solana App Store on the mobile phone. I don't know how good the mobile phone is. It's gonna be the second generation. I think the cost has already come down like 50% compared to the first generation. If I remember correctly, the first generation was like 1,000 per phone, and now the second one is roughly about $500. It's in pre-order, for people who may be curious on ordering that. I don't know what operating system it will be. It's gonna be hardware device, obviously, because it's a Solana mobile wallet. A mobile phone comes with like a wallet in there. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's not too much actual technical innovation in like a smartphone, right?
mm,
Like I think the only innovation is really bureaucratic. Like you have to. It's really the gatekeepers of the App Store. Like, to what extent do we need to go in order to make sure that there's no gatekeepers? And
yeah.
that it's great that Solana has some like really, really good engineering. And I'm glad that it's good that they're one of the first ones to do that. Kind of like flag bearer for this industry that, yeah, we can do that. We can make an entirely blockchain native smartphone. I think the key there is on the App Store, like you said.
Yeah.
The app store is going to be critical, and really the purpose of that phone, because the rest of it, I don't see. There's like a lot of innovation that the East Asian manufacturers, Apple, has already completed on that side. It's pretty close to what it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
probably they're gonna release next year. So I guess we just have to look forward to see how they do, right? Yeah. But I'm also
Yeah.
quite curious as well too. Yeah. How that phone
Yeah.
phone
Definitely.
will perform. Yeah. Cool. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
two more questions before we close out the show here. One is, do you have any advice for people who want to build their own Web3 company?
And that's a good question. See, the thing is, like, the for entrepreneurship, right? Like, you have it's really, at least I'm finding it, it's really more of an art than it is a science. Uh, there's um, um, no one answer. So if I had to give like an answer that's very general, um, for the Web3 space is, first of all, this industry is very, very wide. Its reach will be very widespread. So whoever you are, like, there is a perspective that your unique perspective in maybe that itself can translate into a business in this space. talk to a lot of people to understand kind of what's going on, but then also form your own mental models. Like naturally, I mean, there's so much marketing in this, but form your own mental models because that is what will allow you to distill from what is real from and what is not real. And we've all been in this space. We've seen projects literally they're headlining and then the next year they're gone, right? And publicly we saw FTX headlined and then gone. So it's very important to form your own mental model and be clear in your values. Otherwise, you may get taken, for a ride. And yeah, I think I'd say those two. Like this industry, like who you will meet in this industry is so diverse, right? And in saying that, it's to also say that there's your uniqueness is like readily welcomed in the space. And number two, when you do come in, make sure to maintain your individual kind of mental model of thinking, because that is incredibly valuable for yourself and for the space as well. Yeah. It's
Interesting
easy to
point
get
about that.
locked into a tribe. It's easy to get locked into a particular tribe. It's easy to get locked into a particular thing. And that's basically based either off of groupthink or based out of secondhand learning. But really, in this space, to distill what is real, you need firsthand experience and firsthand learning. So I would recommend that. And that spans from economics to technology to the social narratives, all of that.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting for you raise up about that because I do think that I've talked to many entrepreneurs, and I think some of them certainly said that you kind of need to have a contrarian view, right? You don't want to have a group thing because if you're trying to, for example, if you're trying to do a 0 to 1 type of business, right, you do definitely need to have a contrarian view, right? Something that most people like don't see, but like you believe that it will be correct, and I think also you need to be able to maybe predict not necessarily predict the future, but maybe either build the demand or create something that you believe will be successful for the future, right? Fascinating. So thank you for sharing those advice. And a final question: where can people follow you? Feel free to share any public handles, username, and feel free to tell people where they can find your book as well too. Your physical book.
Yeah, definitely. So, our website itself, maybe we can plug it into the description of the podcast, but that's
Sure.
RonynWallets.com, Ronyn with a Y. And there you'll find kind of all our products for enterprise, dApps, and individuals. You can download our free hardware or mobile wallets, download our free desktop and mobile wallets. And then, as mentioned, I launched a book, which is Foundations of Self-Custody. So if you really want kind of a general understanding, a really long vision for what self-custody means for yourself, for your community, for the people around you, and then eventually for organizations that are running states, because this is going to form the narrative of, right now we're in kind of, some would say, in an unstable time. And so mental models in that sense are important. And so what this can offer you is a mental model for digital self-custody, right? Like what that means going forward into the future. And so that you can find out on the website too. And then one thing to look out for maybe is we're going to be launching Ronyn Community later this year, which is basically we want to make it, on this aspect of making the UX UI very easy. We want to make it the largest practical knowledge base for how to interact with crypto dApps and just kind of navigate the crypto space through your wallet. And so we'll be launching that later this year and hope to kind of really make it easy for people to be, the best investment you can make in the space where you will not lose money is learning, right? And so we want to bring that to you. We want to give you the opportunity to learn because that's one investment you won't lose out on. So you can check out Ronyn Community. That's all on our website. My Twitter is at VS4DHAK. So you can hear my tweets there and perspectives there. Yeah, that would be pretty much
awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure to put all the links and username here in the show description so people can click on and follow your company and where they can find your books as well too.
awesome.
Veda, it's been a real pleasure, having you on the show today. Talking about your career at Tesla and then coming to Japan, building a Web3 hardware wallet. I think it's a very fascinating story, very very inspiring as well for many people. I wish you the best of luck and thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks for having me and kind of creating this space, right? It's this podcast medium it really kind of opens a mind in like a decentralized way, and so you're kind of now one of those folks that's like boom, changing people's minds, and so yeah, it's awesome. And I'm glad to kind of see where it goes in the future.
Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, I'm just trying to maybe maybe bringing out one new perspective or new voice, new interesting thing for people to learn, right? I mean, that's my hope. I'm like a Web3 evangelist right now in some way or another. It's just because I love this industry. I think it has a lot of future potential for the
Yeah.
world. So yeah, once again, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna make it.
And we're back to my studio. What do you guys think about this episode with Veda, founder CEO Ronyn Wallet? Building a software business is hard already, but I think building a software and hardware business is even harder. Veda is kind enough to share with us a special discount code for listeners of the podcast interested in purchasing hardware wallet. The special link is in the episode description. For the next episode, we'll be talking to Matthew. He is the co-founder and CEO of Setomin. Setomin is a blockchain transformation company. Blockchain transformation basically means connecting people, processes, and technology to accelerate value creation with blockchain. Well, to put it short, they are basically helping Web2 businesses using blockchain technology to create new value. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It will mean a lot to me. Thank you for watching and see you next time.